Life today feels like a race without a finish line. You wake up already tired, your phone buzzing before you even open your eyes. Notifications, emails, endless reminders pull you in every direction. And before you know it, you are running on autopilot, chasing tasks that never end. You tell yourself that if you can just get through this week, if you can just finish that project, if you can just pay off that debt, then maybe you will finally breathe. But the truth is, as soon as one mountain is climbed, another rises. This cycle keeps repeating, and the quiet thought appears in your heart. Is this all there is? That thought often feels dangerous, so you push it down. You distract yourself with entertainment, with scrolling, with one more cup of coffee to keep going. Yet late at night, when everything is quiet, the ache comes back. Stress, anxiety, loneliness, the feeling that no matter how hard you try, something is missing. You are not alone. Millions around the world feel the same. We were told that success, money, and recognition would bring peace, yet even when some of these arrive, peace does not. Instead, it slips further away. You may look around and see people who seem to have everything, yet you sense the emptiness in their eyes, the constant restlessness in their words. It is a silent epidemic of our time, having more than ever before, yet feeling less alive inside. The good news is there is a way through. Not by adding more, not by forcing more, but by turning in a new direction. For thousands of years, human beings have asked the same questions you are asking now. How do I find peace? How do I carry less pain? How do I live with meaning? The ancient teachings of the Buddha were never meant to be abstract philosophy for monks hidden away. They were meant for ordinary people, living ordinary lives, filled with ordinary struggles. They were meant for people like you, searching for a way to breathe again. These teachings are not about blind belief. They are about direct experience, simple steps that anyone can take, no matter where they come from, no matter what they believe. They are not about escaping the world, but about living in it more fully, with less fear, less clinging, and more freedom. Over the course of this journey, we will walk through the deepest struggles of modern life, the weight of stress, the pressure of money, the pain of broken relationships, the grip of anxiety, and so much more. For each pain, there is a door. For each struggle, there is a way through. The door is the wisdom of mindfulness, of letting go, of compassion, of cause and effect. This is not just religion. It is practical medicine for the heart. Imagine learning how to face stress without being crushed by it. Imagine seeing money not as a chain, but as a tool you can use wisely. Imagine learning to love without fear of loss, to live without being pulled apart by every storm of emotion. This is possible. You will hear stories, metaphors, and simple reflections that touch the heart, because the truth is always simple. You will not be asked to become someone else. You will be invited to remember who you already are beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the constant running. Tonight, we open this journey together. It is not a path of adding more burdens. It is a path of releasing. It is not a path of escaping reality. It is a path of living it with clarity and calm. And as you listen, word by word, a seed will be planted inside you, a seed that whispers. Maybe freedom is not somewhere far away. Maybe it has always been here, waiting for you to notice. You have probably felt it many times, the need to control everything around you. The calendar packed with commitments, the to-do lists that never end, the endless drive to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. From the moment you open your eyes, the mind already races ahead. You check the news, the messages, the deadlines, and even before breakfast, you feel behind. Modern culture tells you that the only way to survive is to stay ahead of the curve, to keep grinding, to never relax. If you pause, you fear that life will pass you by. If you loosen your grip, you worry that everything will collapse. So you push harder, adding one more task, one more responsibility, one more effort to keep control. And yet, beneath all that effort, a strange truth appears. The more you tighten your grip, the more exhausted you feel. The more you demand control, the less peace you have. It is like holding a handful of sand. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips away. Many people live in this constant cycle of control. They believe success comes only from constant vigilance. They believe love requires endless management. They believe happiness must be constructed brick by brick through endless effort. And still, after years of struggle, they often find themselves empty, restless, unsure why peace feels so far away. This is the hidden cost of control. It drains the spirit. It steals joy from simple things. It makes life feel like a battlefield where you are always preparing for the next attack. Think about a river. The water flows, bending around rocks, moving without resistance. Now think of yourself standing in that river, trying to push the water back, trying to force it to go the way you want. How long before you collapse in exhaustion? How long before you realize the water never obeys force? Life is like that river. We try to push, to demand, to insist that things flow our way. But no matter how strong we are, life has its own current. And when we fight that current, we drown in frustration. This pain shows itself in many small ways. You may notice it when a plan changes, and suddenly you feel angry, as if life betrayed you. You may notice it when your child or your partner does not behave the way you expect, and the tension rises inside you. You may notice it when your career refuses to follow the straight path you imagined, leaving you desperate to force opportunities that are not ready. The pain of control is not just about big failures. It is about the daily friction of resisting what is. Emotionally, this resistance grows heavy. Anxiety appears because you know deep down you cannot control everything. Stress builds because the list never ends. Anger rises when people do not follow your script. Sadness creeps in when your efforts do not lead to the security you imagined. It becomes a silent prison with walls built from your own expectations. And the cruelest part is that society praises this prison. People admire the busy worker, the relentless achiever, the person who sacrifices rest for ambition. They rarely see the cost beneath the surface, the sleepless nights, the broken health, the quiet despair. But there is another way. The Buddha once taught that grasping and clinging are the roots of suffering. When we demand life to be different from what it is, we plant the seeds of our own pain. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that life has its rhythm, its seasons, its timing. To live well is not to fight against reality, but to align with it, to flow with it. Just as the river flows effortlessly, you too can move through life with less resistance when you stop trying to control every drop. Mindfulness becomes the first step. It is not a complex ritual. It is the simple act of noticing what is happening right now without judgment. You sit quietly, breathing, and suddenly you realize how much tension you carry in your shoulders, how fast your thoughts are running, how hard your heart is pounding. By noticing, you begin to release. You see clearly that control is only an illusion. You realize that many of the storms you fight exist only in your mind. Slowly, awareness creates space, and in that space, freedom appears. Imagine yourself sitting in traffic. The car in front is moving slowly, and frustration builds. Normally, you grip the wheel tighter, mutter under your breath, and imagine all the things you are losing because of this delay. But with mindfulness, you breathe. You notice the tension, you notice the thoughts, and then you see the truth. The traffic is not in your control. The more you resist, the more you suffer. But if you release, if you simply accept the moment as it is, the frustration dissolves. The situation does not change, but your relationship to it does. That is freedom. Letting go does not mean giving up on responsibility. It does not mean abandoning discipline or refusing to act. It means acting wisely without the desperate need to force outcomes. It means caring without clinging, working without burning, loving without possessing. It means trusting that life can unfold without your constant interference. Like a gardener who plants seeds and waters them, you do what you can. But you do not stand over the soil shouting at the plant to grow. You trust the natural process. That trust is the essence of peace. When you start to loosen the grip of control, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel lighter. You laugh more easily. You find joy in small details, like the sound of the wind, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of simple food. You stop demanding that every moment meet your expectations, and suddenly, every moment becomes more alive. This is the gift of letting go. It does not take away life's challenges, but it removes the unnecessary suffering we had on top of them. Asterisk, of course. Letting go is not easy. The mind will fight back. It will whisper, if you stop controlling, you will lose everything. If you stop pushing, you will fall behind. If you let go, you will be weak. These are the lies of fear. But each time you practice awareness, each time you breathe and release, the lies grow weaker. You discover that strength is not in clenching, but in relaxing. Courage is not in forcing, but in trusting. Freedom is not in holding tightly, but in opening your hand. And in this opening, you also discover compassion. You begin to see that everyone else is also struggling with control. The boss who pressures you is also afraid. The partner who argues with you is also clinging. The stranger who cuts you off in traffic is also drowning in their own river of stress. When you see this, anger softens. You no longer need to fight every battle. You can choose kindness, patience, and understanding, not because you are weak, but because you are free. This journey into freedom is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you already are beneath the fear and control. It is about returning to the natural flow of life, where moments unfold, where joy arises without force, where peace is not something you chase, but something you notice. This is the dance of control and flow, the dance of holding and releasing. Each step you take toward letting go brings you closer to the rhythm of life itself. And as this rhythm becomes familiar, a question arises in your heart. If everything is always moving, always shifting, then perhaps nothing is permanent. Perhaps the emotions you struggle with are not as solid as they seem. Perhaps the storm of anger, the wave of sadness, the fire of stress are not permanent prisons, but passing weather. This question leads us forward into the whispers of impermanence, where we begin to see that everything that arises will also fade, and that in this truth lies a deeper freedom. If you sit quietly for just a moment, you begin to notice that life is always moving. The breath rises, then falls. A sound appears, then vanishes into silence. A thought flashes, then dissolves before you can even hold it. Yet the mind clings as if each moment were permanent, as if we could freeze it and keep it forever. This is the illusion that causes so much pain. We want happiness to last forever. We want loved ones to stay the same. We want our bodies to never age, our successes to never fade, our relationships to never change. But the truth is clear. Everything changes. Nothing remains fixed. The whispers of impermanence are always present, even if we try to ignore them. Think of a sunset. For a few minutes, the sky glows with colors so beautiful they almost hurt to look at. You might feel a quiet sadness, even in the beauty, because you know it cannot last. Soon the light will fade and night will come. The same is true for joy. A moment of laughter, a celebration, the warmth of holding someone you love, none of it lasts forever. The mind resists this truth because it fears loss. It tries to grasp the moment, to lock it into memory, to make it permanent. Yet clinging to joy only makes the fading more painful. On the other side, when suffering arrives, the mind tells the opposite story. It says, "This pain will never end. This sadness will always be with you. This fear will define you forever." But suffering, too, is impermanent. The storm passes. The wound heals. The tears dry. Even the heaviest grief changes shape with time. Impermanence is not only about loss. It is also about hope. No matter how dark the night, morning always comes. No matter how deep the sorrow, light eventually returns. When you accept this truth, a deep shift happens. You begin to see emotions not as permanent prisons, but as visitors. Anger comes to your door. You notice it, you breathe, and eventually it leaves. Joy arrives, you welcome it, and then it moves on. Each feeling is like a cloud drifting across the wide sky. Some clouds are dark, some are golden, some are heavy with rain, but none of them stay forever. The sky itself remains vast and open, untouched by the passing weather. You are that sky. Your emotions are the weather. They come and go, but your deeper awareness remains. The pain comes when we confuse the weather for the sky. We think, "I am angry," instead of "anger is passing through me." We think, "I am broken," instead of "sadness is here for now." We mistake the visitor for the host, forgetting that we are larger than any single emotion. The teachings remind us to see clearly. Whatever arises will also pass. This clarity does not erase pain, but it softens the grip. It gives us space to breathe inside our struggles. Consider how this works in daily life. You are at work, and your colleague criticizes your effort. A wave of shame rises, followed by anger. Normally, you might carry that all day, replaying the words, building a story about how unfair it was, how unworthy you are, how much you must defend yourself. The shame grows heavy, the anger becomes sharp, and by evening, you are exhausted. But if you practice seeing impermanence, you pause. You breathe. You say to yourself, "This is just a feeling moving through." You do not build a story around it. You do not cling. And like a cloud, it passes. The day continues lighter, freer. This way of seeing transforms everything. A restless night of worry becomes a passing wave instead of a permanent curse. A heated argument becomes a storm that eventually clears, instead of a scar that defines the relationship forever. Even physical pain can be seen in this way, not denied, not resisted, but felt as shifting sensations that rise and fall. The body ages, the seasons change, relationships transform. None of this is a mistake. It is the natural flow of life. The Buddha described this truth with the word anicca, impermanence. He did not teach it to make people despair. He taught it to set people free. If you cling to what is changing, you will suffer. If you fight against change, you will break. But if you understand impermanence deeply, you discover a new kind of strength, a strength rooted in acceptance. You learn to appreciate joy more fully because you know it will not last. You learn to endure sorrow with patience because you know it too will pass. Life becomes less like a prison and more like a dance, each step moving naturally into the next. Imagine standing by the ocean. The waves rise, crash, and then withdraw. You could try to stop them, shouting at the sea to stay still. Or you could accept the rhythm, watching the beauty of each wave as it comes and goes. This is how impermanence works. You cannot stop it, but you can learn to move with it. When you do, you discover peace. This acceptance does not mean you stop caring. In fact, it allows you to care more deeply. When you know a flower will fade, you treasure its bloom more. When you know a conversation may be the last with someone you love, you listen with your whole heart. When you know time is short, you live more fully. Impermanence is not an enemy of love. It is the reason love matters. It teaches us to cherish what is here now, instead of waiting for some perfect future that may never come. Yet the mind resists. It whispers, if everything changes, then what can I rely on? If nothing lasts, how can I feel safe? This is where deeper wisdom enters. What you can rely on is not the forms of life, but the flow itself. What you can trust is not the permanence of moments, but the truth that they will always change. Safety does not come from fixing life in place. It comes from developing the strength to move with its changes, the resilience to remain open no matter what arrives. This strength grows each time you practice mindfulness. You sit with your breath, noticing how each inhale becomes an exhale, how each moment dissolves into the next. You see impermanence not as an idea, but as a direct experience in your own body. The fear softens, the trust grows, and slowly you begin to live differently. Think about the last time you felt joy. Maybe it was a smile from your child, or the taste of something delicious, or the relief of good news. That joy did not last. It faded, as all things do. But what if instead of feeling sad that it ended, you could feel grateful that it happened at all? Gratitude is the natural response to impermanence. It says, thank you for this moment, even if it does not last. And strangely, when you live this way, joy becomes more abundant because you are no longer demanding it to stay. You are simply receiving it as it comes. The same is true for pain. When heartbreak arrives, you may want to push it away, to numb it, to escape it. But what if you could sit with it, breathe with it, and trust that it too will pass? The pain does not vanish instantly, but your relationship to it changes. You no longer drown. You float. You let the waves move through you, knowing they will eventually calm. This way of living is not passive. It is deeply alive. It asks you to be present, to engage with each moment fully, knowing it will not repeat. It asks you to let go of the stories that chain you to the past or the future, and to meet life as it is, here and now. And when you do, you begin to sense something even deeper. Beneath all the changing forms, there is a spacious awareness that does not change. Beneath the waves, there is an ocean. Beneath the weather, there is the sky. Beneath the impermanence of all things, there is a stillness in you that is always here. Asterisk, this discovery opens the door to the next step. For once you see that emotions, thoughts, and even experiences are not permanent, you begin to question something even deeper, the story of who you think you are. Is that story also impermanent? Is the identity you cling to just another cloud in the sky? If everything changes, perhaps even the self you defend is not as solid as it seems. And if that is true, then maybe freedom lies not only in letting go of emotions, but in letting go of the very idea of a fixed self. This realization leads us onward to unveiling your true nature, where the deepest liberation begins. You may have noticed that even after learning to let go of control, even after seeing that everything changes, there is still a deeper weight inside you. It is the voice that says, "This is who I am. This is my story. This is what people must think of me." We carry it like invisible armor. Sometimes it feels protective, giving us an identity in a chaotic world. But often it becomes a cage. It defines us in ways that limit our freedom. You might say to yourself, "I am shy. I am broken. I am strong. I am unworthy. I am successful. I am a failure." Each of these statements feels like truth, but they are only stories. They are masks created by memory, by culture, by fear, by pride. And when you cling to them too tightly, you suffer. Think about the roles you play. At work, you may be the achiever, the responsible one. At home, you may be the caretaker, the peacemaker, or the one who must always be in control. With friends, you may become the entertainer, the listener, or the quiet observer. None of these roles are wrong. They are natural ways we relate to others. But the suffering comes when we believe that any of these roles are the whole of who we are. When someone challenges the role, we feel threatened. When we fail to live up to it, we feel shame. When we lose it, we feel lost. The emotional cost of this identity trap is heavy. Anxiety grows because you fear being seen differently than you want. Guilt follows when your actions do not match the image you are defending. Anger rises when others misunderstand you. Sadness arrives when the story you told yourself about who you are begins to crumble. And beneath all of these feelings is fear, the fear that without these labels, you are nothing. But here is the truth. You are not your story. You are not the labels that others give you, nor the ones you repeat to yourself. You are not the collection of memories, successes, or failures. Those are just ripples on the surface. Beneath them lies something deeper, something unshakable. The Buddha described it not as a fixed soul, but as an awareness beyond clinging, a space of freedom, not trapped by identity. When you look closely, you discover that the self you defend so fiercely is not solid at all. It shifts from moment to moment, depending on who you are with, what you are doing, what mood you are in. This is why we sometimes feel like strangers, even to ourselves. Imagine a theater. On the stage, actors wear costumes, delivering lines, playing different roles. One night they are a king, the next a beggar, the next a lover. But behind the costumes, behind the masks, the actor remains. In the same way, you play many roles in life. They are useful. They allow you to live and connect. But behind them, there is awareness, the actor who is not limited by the costume. When you cling to the role, you forget your deeper nature. When you remember the awareness, you can wear the costume lightly, without fear of losing yourself. This recognition can be frightening at first. If I am not my story, then who am I? The mind does not like uncertainty. It prefers a fixed identity, even if it is painful. But if you stay with the question, if you sit with the openness, you begin to feel the freedom. You begin to see that you are not trapped by your past, not defined by your mistakes, not limited by what others think. You are larger than any story. You are the space in which the stories come and go. Mindfulness helps you see this directly. Sit quietly and notice the thoughts that arise. One moment the thought says, I am tired. The next says, I am strong. Another says, I am unworthy. Each one claims to be the truth. But if you watch closely, you see they are just words, just sounds in the mind. They come and go like birds across the sky. If you believe each one, you are pulled in every direction. But if you watch with awareness, you see the deeper truth. You are not the thought. You are the awareness noticing the thought. And that awareness is vast, open, and free. This is not about erasing personality. You will still have preferences, talents, and quirks. You may love music, dislike crowds, enjoy solitude, or thrive in conversation. Those are natural expressions of your uniqueness. But when you stop clinging to them as absolute identity, they become lighter. You can enjoy them without being chained to them. You can change without fear. You can meet each moment fresh, instead of dragging the past into it. Think of a child playing. One moment the child is a superhero, the next a teacher, the next an astronaut. They move freely from role to role, never clinging, never worrying that they must defend the story. As adults, we forget this freedom. We begin to believe the roles are fixed. We begin to carry them like heavy stones. The practice invites us to return to the child's playfulness, to wear our identities lightly, knowing they are temporary, knowing they do not define our essence. When you live this way, relationships change. You no longer need to prove yourself constantly. You no longer need others to confirm your story. You can listen more deeply because you are not busy defending your image. You can forgive more easily because you no longer cling to the identity of victim or victor. You can love more freely because you are not trying to possess or control the other person as part of your story. Love becomes an act of presence, not a transaction to protect identity. The pain of defending the self begins to dissolve. The fear of being misunderstood weakens. The pressure to perform softens. You realize that people will see you in many different ways, and none of those views can capture your whole being. Just as no single photograph can capture the entire landscape, no single opinion can define you. This realization is not only liberating, it is healing. It allows you to rest in your own being without needing constant validation. From this place, compassion naturally arises. You begin to see that others too are trapped in their stories. The angry person is defending a fragile identity. The arrogant one is hiding insecurity. The fearful one is protecting an old wound. When you see this, judgment softens. Instead of reacting, you feel empathy. Instead of fighting, you can choose understanding. Because you know how heavy the cage of identity can be, you no longer want to add to anyone else's burden. This shift opens the door to a new way of living. Instead of asking, "How can I defend who I am?" you begin to ask, "How can I respond with clarity in this moment?" Instead of clinging to a fixed role, you begin to flow with the needs of the situation. You are flexible, adaptable, alive. This is what the Buddha called liberation, not an escape from life, but a deeper freedom within it. And as you taste this freedom, another insight begins to grow. If the self is not solid, if identity is only a shifting story, then perhaps the path is not about fixing yourself at all, but about finding balance. Perhaps the way forward is not about clinging to extremes, but about walking the middle path, the dynamic harmony between effort and rest, between engagement and letting go. This realization guides us toward the next step, where the dance of balance reveals itself as the true way to live with peace. Even after glimpsing the truth that you are not your story, the old patterns return. The mind clings to its favorite masks, whispering again and again, "This is me, this is who I must be." The grip is strong because the world rewards it. Employers praise you for being dependable. Friends expect you to play your usual role. Family leans on you for stability. To step outside these roles feels risky, even dangerous. And so you tighten the armor once more, thinking it protects you, not realizing it slowly suffocates your spirit. The pain of identity is subtle but deep. Imagine someone calls you lazy. If you carry the story that you must always be hardworking, their words cut you like a knife. You feel anger rise, shame burn, fear whisper. But what if you had no need to defend such a story? What if you could simply notice their words as sounds, reflecting their own mind, not defining you? The pain would dissolve. You would remain steady. This is the freedom that comes when you stop clinging to identity. Another example. Imagine you see yourself as the strong one, the one who never cries, the one who always has answers. Then a crisis arrives, and you feel weak, lost, broken. Because you cling to the story of strength, you suffer twice, once from the crisis itself, and again from the shame of notching the image. If instead you could release the demand to always be strong, you would allow yourself to feel, to cry, to receive help. The suffering would soften and compassion would grow. Asterisk, this clinging to self-image is not only personal. It shapes entire societies. Nations cling to stories of superiority. Religions cling to stories of exclusivity. Groups cling to stories of identity. From these stories arise conflict, division, war. At the root is the same illusion, that the self, whether individual or collective, is fixed and must be defended at all costs. When you see through the illusion in yourself, you begin to see it in the world. And seeing clearly is the first step toward peace. The Buddha spoke often of the illusion of self. He did not deny that we exist. He simply pointed out that what we call self is a collection of changing processes: body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness. None of these are permanent. None are independent. None are truly me. When you cling to them as I or mine, suffering follows. When you see them as processes, as movements, as passing phenomena, freedom arises. You are like a wave in the ocean, unique in shape and form, yet inseparable from the sea. To cling to the wave as permanent is to fight reality. To see it as movement within the vast ocean is to find peace. You might wonder, if I let go of identity, will I become empty, meaningless, lost? The opposite is true. Letting go does not erase you. It reveals a deeper ground where you are not trapped by definition. It allows you to live with openness, to respond freshly to each moment, to meet life with curiosity instead of fear. You do not become less. You become more free. This freedom has a quality of lightness. You can laugh at yourself, knowing you are not trapped by image. You can forgive yourself, knowing mistakes do not define you. You can grow and change, knowing you are not bound to a fixed past. The weight of proving yourself lifts, and in its place comes a sense of play, of possibility, of wonder. Life becomes less of a performance and more of a dance. When you live from this place, relationships transform. Instead of demanding others to confirm your identity, you allow them to be themselves. Instead of fearing rejection, you accept that people will see you in many ways. Instead of clinging to the role of victim, hero, or judge, you relate from presence. You listen more deeply. You respond more gently. You connect more authentically. Because you are not trapped in your own story, you have space to truly meet the story of another. The path of letting go of identity is not about abandoning responsibility. It is about meeting responsibility without chains. You can still be a parent, a partner, a worker, a friend, but you no longer cling to those roles as absolute definitions. You wear them like clothes, not like skin. You can change them when life asks you to, without losing yourself. You can honor them with sincerity without being crushed by them. As you practice this, you begin to notice something else. Life itself calls you not toward extremes, but toward balance. When you cling to identity, you are pulled to one side, too rigid, too defensive, too fixed. When you release identity, you find the middle path. You discover a way of being that is flexible, adaptable, alive. This is not a weak compromise. It is a dynamic harmony. It is the wisdom of responding appropriately, moment by moment, without clinging to extremes. Think of a tree in the wind. If it is too rigid, it snaps. If it is too weak, it collapses. But if it is flexible, rooted yet bending, it survives the storm. The same is true for us. When we cling to identity, we become rigid, brittle, afraid of change. When we release, we bend with the winds of life, staying rooted yet adaptable. This is the strength of the middle way. And so the journey continues. After seeing that you are not your story, the next question arises. How then do you live? If you are no longer chained to a fixed identity, how do you walk through the world? With balance? The answer is not in rigid rules, nor in careless freedom, but in a living rhythm, a middle way that dances between effort and ease, between discipline and rest, between holding and releasing. This is the path of dynamic harmony, the next step on the journey, where you discover how to move through life not by extremes, but by balance, not by fear, but by wisdom. Life has a way of pulling us toward extremes. One day you feel driven to work endlessly, to chase goals with fierce intensity, telling yourself that rest is weakness. The next day you feel burned out, collapsing into avoidance, escaping into distraction, unable to face even the simplest task. You swing back and forth, from pushing too hard to withdrawing completely, never quite finding peace. This swinging between extremes is exhausting. It leaves you feeling unsteady, like a boat tossed by waves without an anchor. You know you cannot keep living this way, yet you do not know another path. This is the pain of imbalance. It shows up in the body as tension, fatigue, even illness. It shows up in the mind as anxiety, guilt, and confusion. It shows up in relationships as conflict, because when you are caught in extremes, you bring that turbulence into every interaction. You might push others away with your intensity, or burden them with your withdrawal. The middle, the place of calm stability, feels far away. Emotionally, imbalance feeds insecurity. When you are working frantically, you fear that if you stop, everything will collapse. When you are avoiding, you feel guilty, believing you are wasting your life. Both sides are heavy. Both sides keep you trapped. And society reinforces this cycle. It praises the overachiever who sacrifices everything for success. It also tempts you with constant escape, endless entertainment, quick pleasures, easy distractions. Caught between these pressures, you feel like there is no solid ground. But there is another way. The Buddha described it as the middle path, not a frozen midpoint, not a compromise, but a living balance. Imagine walking a tightrope. You do not stand stiff in the center, nor do you lean too far to one side. You make small, constant adjustments, responding to each movement of the rope, each shift of your body. Balance is not found once and held forever. It is created moment by moment, through awareness, through responsiveness. This is dynamic harmony. In practice, this means noticing when you are pushing too hard and softening. It means noticing when you are withdrawing too much and re-engaging. It means listening to your body, your breath, your heart as guides. You begin to see the signs of imbalance early, the shallow breath, the racing thoughts, the heavy fatigue. Instead of ignoring them, you treat them as signals, gentle reminders to return to balance. For example, you are working late into the night. Your shoulders ache, your eyes blur, your breath is tight. Normally, you would push through, driven by fear of failure. But if you pause and notice, you realize the cost. You close the laptop, you breathe deeply, you rest. The work still gets done, but now with clarity and energy instead of exhaustion. Another day, you feel the pull of avoidance. You sit scrolling endlessly on your phone, escaping from what you fear. But if you notice with awareness, you can set it down, take a breath, and take a small step forward. Not with force, but with presence. Each small adjustment brings you back to balance. This way of living transforms not only your actions, but your inner world. Anxiety softens because you are no longer chasing perfection or drowning in avoidance. Guilt fades because you are no longer trapped in extremes. Peace grows because you are walking with awareness, step by step. The middle path does not demand that you never stumble. It invites you to notice when you stumble and gently return. It is a path of compassion, not perfection. The wisdom of balance also applies to emotions. Think of anger. At one extreme, you explode, hurting yourself and others. At the other extreme, you suppress it, pretending it is not there, letting it burn silently inside. The middle way is to acknowledge the anger, to feel it fully, but not to act from it blindly. You notice the heat, the tension, the stories in your mind. You breathe, you give it space, and in that space, wisdom arises. You may still speak, you may still act, but now from clarity, not from reactivity. The anger becomes a teacher instead of a chain. The same is true for desire. At one extreme, you indulge endlessly, chasing pleasure without limit. At the other, you deny yourself harshly, rejecting even simple joys. Both extremes lead to suffering. The middle way is to enjoy with awareness, without clinging, without addiction. to eat the meal with gratitude, to savor the beauty of music, to rest in love, all without needing to possess or control. Pleasure becomes lighter, freer, no longer a prison, but a gift. This practice of balance is not about rules. It is about sensitivity. It is about listening deeply to your own life, to the signals of your body, mind, and heart. It is about responding wisely, not from habit, but from awareness. Some days balance means working with full energy. Some days balance means resting deeply. Some moments call for speaking truth, others for silence. Balance is alive, changing with each situation. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Think of music. A song is not made from one constant note, but from the dance between sound and silence, high and low, tension and release. In the same way, life becomes harmonious when you move with balance, not clinging to one extreme, not rejecting the other, but allowing the dance. When you live this way, you feel a sense of rhythm, of flow, of ease. Life no longer feels like a battle, but like music you are part of. As balance deepens, compassion grows. Because you are not trapped in extremes, you can see more clearly. You can sense when others are caught in their own extremes, and you can respond with patience instead of judgment. You can offer steadiness to those who are overwhelmed, encouragement to those who are withdrawing. Your presence becomes a gift, a reminder of balance in a world of extremes. This is not an easy path. The pull of habit is strong. The lure of extremes is powerful. But each small act of awareness brings you closer. Each time you pause, breathe, and adjust, you strengthen the habit of balance. Over time, the middle way becomes not just a practice, but a way of being. You live with less tension, less fear, less clinging. You live with more ease, more clarity, more compassion. And in this ease, another truth begins to reveal itself. Even when you find balance, old patterns still rise. Memories, habits, deep imprints of the past surface again and again, pulling you back into suffering. You may wonder, why do I keep returning to the same struggles, even when I know better? The answer lies in the hidden patterns beneath awareness, the old residues that shape your reactions. To continue the journey, you must learn not only to balance in the present, but to dissolve these deep patterns from the past. This leads us forward into the work of facing the echoes within, where the old formations can finally be released and deeper freedom can emerge. The journey of balance is not about reaching a perfect stillness that never wavers. It is about learning to dance with life as it unfolds, moment by moment. You will stumble, you will lean too far, you will sometimes swing into excess or fall into avoidance. But what changes is the way you respond. Instead of shame, you meet yourself with kindness. Instead of fear, you choose awareness. Balance is not the absence of mistakes. It is the gentle art of returning, again and again, to the middle. Think of walking through a forest path. Roots cross the trail, stones scatter underfoot, branches bend low. Each step requires attention. Sometimes you trip, sometimes you slip, but you adjust, you keep moving. The path does not demand perfection. It asks only that you continue with awareness. This is how the middle way works. It is alive, responsive, forgiving. Each breath is an invitation to return. This balance does not only free you from exhaustion, it also brings clarity to your choices. When you are caught in extremes, your vision narrows. You make decisions from fear, from pride, from desperation. But when you rest in balance, your vision opens. You can see the larger picture. You can sense what action is wise, not just what is urgent. You begin to notice the subtle difference between reacting and responding. Reaction comes from habit. Response comes from presence. This difference transforms the quality of your life. Consider how this applies to conflict. At one extreme, you might lash out in anger. speaking words that wound. At the other extreme, you might stay silent, swallowing your truth, letting resentment grow. Both create suffering. Balance invites you to pause, breathe, and feel the heat of anger without being consumed. From this place, you can speak with honesty, but also with care. The conflict does not disappear, but it becomes a doorway to understanding rather than a battlefield dot. Or consider how this applies to ambition. At one extreme, you chase success relentlessly, sacrificing health, relationships, peace. At the other extreme, you give up, telling yourself it is safer not to try. Both extremes steal life from you. Balance invites you to engage fully with your goals, but without clinging to them as your identity. You work with energy, but you rest with trust. You act with dedication, but you release attachment to the outcome. This middle path allows success without obsession, effort without collapse. Even in spirituality, extremes appear. Some chase purity with harsh discipline, denying every human need, punishing themselves for every desire. Others reject practice altogether, indulging without reflection, convincing themselves that awareness is unnecessary. The middle way is neither denial nor indulgence. It is a living practice of awareness, compassion, and presence. It honors the body without worshiping it. It honors the mind without being enslaved by it. It honors life without clinging to it. This dynamic harmony is not static. It requires constant listening. One day balance may mean working hard, the next day resting deeply. One moment balance may mean speaking boldly, another moment staying silent. There are no fixed formulas. Balance is a relationship with the present, a trust in awareness to guide you. When you live this way, life feels less like a battle and more like a flow. You stop fighting yourself. You stop fighting reality. You begin to move with it, like a dancer with music, like a river with its current dot. Yet even as balance grows, another challenge appears. Old patterns rise from beneath the surface. You notice yourself reacting automatically, even before awareness can intervene. Someone says a certain word, and suddenly anger surges. A memory flashes, and fear grips you. A small failure occurs, and shame drowns you. These reactions feel older than your current self, as if they come from a deeper place, beyond logic, beyond choice. They are the echoes within, the imprints of past clinging, past fear, past pain. These patterns are powerful because they live not only in the mind, but in the body. You feel them as tightness in the chest, heaviness in the stomach, tension in the jaw. They are not just thoughts you can dismiss. They are grooves carved deep by years of repetition. They are habits of heart and mind, stored energy waiting for a trigger. No matter how much you understand balance, these patterns can pull you back into suffering. And so the journey deepens. The Buddha called these deep formations sankharas. They are the residues of past reactions, the unprocessed emotions, the clinging that never dissolved. Imagine pouring water down a hillside again and again. Over time, the water carves a channel. Even when the rain stops, the channel remains, ready to guide the next flow. In the same way, our repeated reactions carve channels in the mind. When a new event happens, the energy flows automatically into the old channel, creating the same anger, the same fear, the same sorrow. This is why life feels like repeating cycles. But there is hope. Just as channels can be carved, they can also be softened, reshaped, dissolved. The way is not through force. You cannot fight these patterns into submission. Fighting only adds more energy, carving the groove deeper. The way is through awareness, through patient presence. Each time a pattern rises, you notice it. You feel the sensations. You breathe with it. You allow it to exist without reacting to it. Slowly, like a fire burning a log, awareness consumes the stored energy. The groove begins to fade. Imagine an old wound in the body. If you keep picking at it, it never heals. But if you allow it to rest, if you keep it clean, if you give it time, the body knows how to heal itself. The same is true for the mind. When you stop picking at old patterns, when you allow them to rise and pass without feeding them, they begin to dissolve. It may take time, but healing is certain. This process requires courage. Sitting with an old fear is uncomfortable. Meeting an old anger feels dangerous. Allowing grief to surface can feel overwhelming. But the path invites you to stay, to breathe, to trust that you are larger than any pattern. You are not the anger. You are the awareness noticing anger. You are not the fear. You are the space in which fear rises and falls. Each time you remember this, the grip of the pattern weakens. The work of dissolving old patterns is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming free. It is about loosening the chains of automatic reaction so that you can live with choice, with clarity, with compassion. It is about breaking the cycle of suffering that repeats generation after generation. Because when you dissolve your own patterns, you also free those around you. You stop passing the old pain to your children, your partners, your friends. You become a point of healing in the chain of humanity, and so the journey continues. Balance has brought you stability. Awareness now calls you deeper, into the hidden layers where old patterns live. The next step is to meet these echoes with presence, to allow the fire of awareness to slowly dissolve them, to uncover the freedom that lies beneath. This is the path of inner transformation, where the deepest healing begins. You may have noticed how certain situations seem to trigger you instantly, as if some hidden button inside your chest were pressed. A word from a parent, a glance from a colleague, a tone in a partner's voice, and suddenly you are flooded with anger, fear, or shame. It feels automatic, beyond your control. You tell yourself, I will stay calm next time. I will respond differently. I will not repeat the same mistake. And yet, when the moment comes, the old reaction appears again. This is the echo of old patterns, the force of memories and wounds carried within you. These patterns were not born yesterday. They are built over years, sometimes generations. They may come from childhood moments when you felt unseen or unloved. They may come from repeated failures that left scars on your confidence. They may come from cultural stories that told you who you must be, what you must fear, what you must avoid. Each time you reacted, the pattern deepened, like grooves cut into stone. Now, when life shakes you, the mind falls into those grooves automatically. The pain of these patterns is heavy because it feels like destiny. You may believe, I am just an angry person. I am just anxious by nature. I am doomed to repeat this. That belief adds another layer of suffering because it makes you feel powerless. And yet, if you look closely, you see that even these patterns are impermanent. They rise, they burn, they fade. They are not your essence. They are imprints, habits, echoes. They can be dissolved. The emotional toll of living under their weight is immense. Think of the tension in your body after an argument, the racing thoughts that keep you awake, the guilt that follows when you hurt someone you love. Think of the exhaustion of carrying fear into every new situation, of sabotaging opportunities because the old pattern whispered you are not enough. These patterns do not only affect your inner world, they shape your relationships, your work, your health. They ripple through your life like unseen currents, pulling you off course. So what is the way through? The Buddha offered a radical yet gentle answer: awareness. Not suppression, not distraction, not self-judgment, but simple, steady awareness. When a pattern rises, the practice is to feel it without fueling it. You notice the heat of anger in the chest, the tightness of fear in the stomach, the heaviness of shame in the throat. You breathe. You watch. You do not run. You do not fight. You do not drown. You stay present. And in that presence, something begins to change. Imagine a fire that burns only when it is fed. If you keep throwing wood onto it, more thoughts, more stories, more reactions, the fire grows. But if you stop feeding it, if you simply sit with it, the fire eventually dies. Old patterns work the same way. They survive on your reactivity. They grow stronger when you believe their stories, when you fight them, when you fear them. But when you stay still, when you let them burn without feeding them, they lose power. Slowly, they dissolve. This is not easy. At first, the sensations may feel overwhelming. The mind may scream, "I cannot bear this." But if you breathe, if you stay just a little longer, you begin to see that the intensity rises and falls like a wave. What once felt unbearable becomes bearable. What once felt endless begins to pass. Each time you stay present, you weaken the pattern's grip. Each time you return to awareness, you carve a new path in the mind, one of freedom instead of bondage. Consider someone who has carried fear of rejection since childhood. Every time they feel ignored, the old wound awakens, whispering, "You are not worthy. You will always be abandoned." The body tightens, the heart races, the mind spins. Normally, they would react, withdraw, lash out, or cling desperately. But with awareness, they pause. They breathe. They say gently, "This is the old echo, not the present truth." They feel the fear fully, without acting from it. Slowly, the wound softens. The pattern loses strength. A new freedom opens. This practice is not about erasing the past. It is about healing it. Each time you sit with an old echo, you give it the attention it never received. You let the inner child be heard, the old wound be felt, the trapped energy be released. Awareness becomes like a gentle fire, warm and steady, burning away the residue without violence. Over time, the echoes grow fainter. They may still rise, but they no longer control you. They become part of your story, not your destiny. The gift of this work is profound. When old patterns dissolve, your relationships shift. You no longer bring the weight of old wounds into every interaction. You no longer punish others for the echoes of your past. You meet people with fresh eyes, allowing them to be who they are, not who your patterns expect them to be. Love becomes cleaner, freer, less entangled with fear and projection. Your inner world shifts too. Anxiety lessens because you no longer believe every echo of fear. Anger softens because you no longer fuel every spark. Sadness lightens because you no longer cling to every shadow. You feel more space inside, more clarity, more peace. Life becomes less like a battle with ghosts and more like a conversation with the present. The Buddha compared this process to cleansing a wound. At first, it may sting. Facing the pain directly is uncomfortable. But if you avoid it, the wound festers. If you face it with care, it heals. In the same way, dissolving old patterns requires courage to feel, patience to stay, and compassion for yourself. It is not about perfection. It is about healing step by step, breath by breath. And as healing deepens, another quality begins to emerge. Your actions become lighter, more natural, less driven by fear or habit. You begin to act not from old echoes, but from clarity. This is the path of effortless action, where energy flows from presence instead of pressure, where life unfolds with less strain and more grace. The work of dissolving old patterns prepares you for this next step, where doing and being merge into one, where effort is transformed into natural flow. The work of meeting old echoes is often slow, and it requires patience. At first, you may feel discouraged because the same patterns keep returning. Fear rises again, anger burns again, shame whispers again. You might think, nothing is changing. I am still the same. But healing does not happen in one great leap. It happens like water wearing away stone, slowly, steadily, with each act of awareness. Each time you sit with a pattern without reacting, you weaken its grip. Each time you breathe through an old fear without running, you reclaim a piece of freedom. Over weeks, months, years, the change becomes clear. What once overwhelmed you now feels smaller. What once seemed permanent now passes more quickly. This slow work is powerful because it transforms not only the surface, but the roots. You are not just changing behavior. You are dissolving the very energy that feeds the behavior. Imagine a tree with poisoned roots. You can cut the branches again and again, but they will keep growing back. Only when the poison is drawn out at the roots does the tree heal. In the same way, awareness draws out the poison at the root of your patterns. It does not suppress them. It does not cut them temporarily. It heals them where they begin. There will be moments when the echoes feel stronger than your awareness. The storm rises and you feel lost again. In those moments, compassion becomes essential. Instead of judging yourself, you remind yourself, this is the old energy. This is not my failure. Even falling back into the pattern is part of the path, because each fall gives you another chance to practice, another chance to return. What matters is not never falling, but always returning. The path of healing is paved with countless returns. One of the most beautiful gifts of this process is forgiveness. As you face your own patterns, you begin to see how much pain you have carried, how much of your reactivity was not chosen, but inherited, shaped by past wounds. You begin to see that others too are caught in their patterns, reacting from their wounds. This understanding softens judgment. You find it easier to forgive, not because the harm was small, but because you see the deeper truth. Hurt people hurt people. When you dissolve your own patterns, you break the chain of passing pain forward. You become a point of healing in the world. This work also brings courage. Once you know you can sit with fear, anger, sadness, and survive, life feels less threatening. You stop running from discomfort. You stop avoiding challenges. You face life with open eyes because you know you are larger than any echo. You are not the wound. You are the awareness that holds the wound. This courage is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, quiet, unshakable. It carries you through storms with grace. And yet, even as you heal old echoes, you notice something new. With less energy trapped in old patterns, you begin to feel lighter, clearer, more alive. You notice that your actions start to flow differently. Where once you pushed and strained, now there is a natural ease. Where once you forced and controlled, now things seem to unfold on their own. It is as if life is moving through you, instead of you pushing against it. This is the beginning of effortless action. But effortless action does not mean laziness. It does not mean doing nothing. It means moving with clarity, without the heavy burden of old patterns or desperate control. It means acting from presence instead of pressure, from wisdom instead of fear. Imagine rowing a boat. If you row frantically against the current, you exhaust yourself. If you drop the oars completely, you drift aimlessly. But if you align with the current and row steadily, you move with power and grace. This is effortless action. The Buddha described it as appamada, mindful diligence. It is alert, awake, engaged, but not strained. It is a balance of energy and ease. It is the ability to care deeply without clinging, to work sincerely without burning out. When your actions arise from presence, they have a different quality. Washing dishes becomes an act of care. Speaking with a friend becomes an act of love. Working becomes an act of contribution, not a frantic chase for worth. Life itself becomes practice, sacred in every detailed dot. To reach this place, dissolving old patterns is essential. Because if your actions are driven by echoes of fear, anger, or shame, they will always carry the weight of strain. You may succeed outwardly, but inwardly you feel exhausted, restless, unsatisfied. When the echoes dissolve, the weight lifts. You are free to act without hidden chains. You are free to let life move through you. And in that freedom, action becomes effortless. This is the bridge where the journey now leads. Having seen through control, having embraced impermanence, having loosened identity, having found balance, and having begun to dissolve old echoes, you are now ready to discover the art of effortless action. It is the way of living where doing and being are no longer separate, where work is no longer a battle, where rest is no longer guilt, where every act becomes an expression of awareness itself. For much of life, you may have been taught that effort is everything. Push harder, stay longer, never rest. From school to career, from family expectations to cultural ideals, the message is constant. If you want success, you must fight for it. And so you try. You wake early, you stay late, you fill your days with tasks, and when exhaustion comes, you tell yourself to keep going. Yet beneath this constant effort, you often feel more tired than accomplished, more empty than fulfilled. This is the paradox of striving. The more you force life, the less alive you feel. Asterisk, you know this experience well. The body grows tense, the breath short, the mind restless. You sit at your desk, shoulders hunched, eyes burning, pushing yourself through one more assignment, one more email, one more responsibility. Your heart longs for rest, but the voice of fear insists, if you stop, you will fail. If you rest, you will fall behind. If you slow down, others will surpass you. And so you drive yourself harder, mistaking strain for strength. The emotional cost is immense. Anxiety builds because no matter how much you do, it never feels like enough. Guilt follows every pause, whispering that you are wasting time. Frustration grows because your effort rarely brings the peace you long for. Instead of feeling free, you feel trapped in a cycle of endless doing. You may even succeed outwardly: money, recognition, achievements, but inside, the emptiness deepens. You realize that effort without clarity is not progress. It is simply spinning the wheel faster in the same cage. This is where the teachings of effortless action offer a new path. Effortless does not mean idle. It does not mean giving up responsibility. It means shifting the source of action from fear to presence, from desperation to clarity. It means moving with life instead of against it. When you live this way, action becomes lighter, more effective, and more joyful. Think of breathing. You do not force each breath with strain. You allow the body to breathe naturally. Sometimes you inhale deeply, sometimes lightly, but always in rhythm with what is needed. Life itself can move in this way. When you act from presence, each step arises naturally, fitting the moment, without the heavy weight of pressure. Work still gets done, often more skillfully, but the struggle dissolves. The Buddha described this as mindful diligence, alert, careful, consistent, but free of clinging. It is the diligence of a gardener who tends plants with patience. They water, they pull weeds, they provide sunlight, but they do not shout at the soil to hurry. They trust the natural rhythm of growth. In the same way, you do your part, but you release the frantic need to control outcomes. You act sincerely, but you do not carry the burden of forcing life to obey you. In daily life, effortless action might look like pausing to breathe before answering an angry email. It might look like giving full attention to a single task instead of scattering your energy across 10. It might look like walking slowly to a meeting instead of rushing with tension. None of these acts are passive. They are alive, awake, and engaged. But they carry a different energy, an energy of presence instead of pressure. When you live this way, even simple tasks change. Washing dishes becomes an act of care instead of a chore. Driving becomes a chance to breathe instead of a race. Conversation becomes a moment of connection instead of a debate to win. Each act, however small, becomes meaningful because it is done with awareness. And strangely, when you stop forcing life, more gets done. Efficiency grows not from pressure, but from clarity. This way of living also transforms relationships. When you act from fear, you may try to control others, to force outcomes, to demand perfection. But when you act from presence, you allow others to be themselves. You speak with honesty instead of manipulation. You listen with openness instead of planning your next defense. The result is deeper trust, less conflict, more peace. Effortless action is not only about what you do, it is about how you are with others, how you bring your presence into every interaction. Of course, the old habits of forcing will try to return. The mind will say, if I relax, nothing will happen. If I let go, life will fall apart. These fears are strong, but each time you act with presence and see that life continues, each time you let go and discover that nothing collapses, trust grows. Slowly, the old belief dissolves. You begin to realize that life does not require your constant pushing. It knows how to flow. You simply need to align with it. The more you practice effortless action, the more joy arises. Tasks that once felt heavy become light. Days that once felt rushed become spacious. Work that once drained you becomes fulfilling. Even rest changes. No longer burdened by guilt, rest becomes nourishing, restoring your energy for the next step. You discover that balance between effort and rest is not a weakness, but wisdom. It is the key to sustainable living. And as this way of being deepens, another truth begins to emerge. When you stop forcing life, you realize how little you actually need to cling to. You see that much of your struggle came not from what life demanded, but from the unnecessary weight you carried: expectations, possessions, identities, fears. As you release these, a profound lightness appears, a sense of openness that feels like standing in a wide sky. This is the doorway into the next step, the canvas of emptiness, where you discover that letting go is not loss, but freedom, not emptiness of meaning, but emptiness that holds infinite possibility. The shift into effortless action is not a single moment of awakening. It is a gradual unfolding, a relearning of how to move through life. You may notice it first in small ways. A task that used to drain you now feels lighter. A conversation that once triggered defensiveness now flows with ease. A responsibility that once seemed impossible now feels manageable. The change does not come from the world outside, but from the source of your action. Instead of acting from fear, you are acting from presence. Instead of pushing against life, you are moving with it. Yet the mind resists. It whispers that without force, nothing will happen. It clings to the old belief that worth comes only through strain, that peace must be earned with exhaustion. This is the old conditioning of a culture that glorifies struggle. Breaking free from it requires trust, a willingness to test the truth in your own experience. Each time you allow an action to arise naturally, each time you let go of pressure and discover that the work still gets done, trust grows. Slowly, the old conditioning loosens. There is a deep relief in this way of living. The body softens, the breath deepens, the mind clears. Stress no longer dominates your days. You find yourself smiling more often, laughing more freely, resting more deeply. Joy arises not as something you must chase, but as a natural companion of presence. Even in difficulty, you carry a sense of steadiness, because you are no longer at war with life. You have discovered that action can be both powerful and peaceful, both effective and gentle. This way of living does not make you passive. It makes you more alive. When an opportunity arises, you respond with clarity, not hesitation. When a challenge comes, you face it with courage, not panic. When love appears, you open to it fully, without fear of loss. Because you are not wasting energy on forcing or resisting, you have more energy to engage with what truly matters. Effortless action is not about doing less. It is about wasting less. It is about channeling energy into what is real, what is present, what is meaningful. Imagine a dancer on stage. The movements look fluid, graceful, even easy. But behind that effortlessness are years of practice, years of aligning body and mind. In the same way, effortless action in life requires practice. It is not about laziness. It is about refining awareness until action flows naturally. Each moment of mindfulness is like a rehearsal. Each breath of presence is like a step of practice. Over time, the performance of your life becomes more graceful, less forced, more true. And when action becomes effortless, you begin to sense the deeper truth. Much of what you thought you needed was never necessary. You see how much energy was wasted on clinging to possessions, to identities, to expectations. You realize that peace does not come from adding more, but from releasing what weighs you down. This realization points to the heart of emptiness, not as a void to fear, but as a canvas of possibility. The Buddha taught that clinging to things as permanent, solid, and self-contained creates suffering. But when you see their emptiness, you are free. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means freedom from false solidity. It means recognizing that all things are interdependent, flowing, open. A flower is not just a flower. It contains the rain, the soil, the sun, the air, the hands that planted it. Without these, it could not exist. The flower is empty of separate self, yet full of the whole universe. You too are like that flower, empty of a fixed, permanent self, yet full of countless causes and conditions, your parents, your teachers, your culture, the food you eat, the air you breathe. When you see this, the fear of emptiness dissolves. You realize that emptiness is not lack. It is connection. It is openness. It is freedom from the prison of isolation. This truth is not abstract. It transforms the way you live. When you see emptiness, you stop clinging so tightly to possessions because you know they are temporary, interdependent, not the source of real security. You stop clinging to rigid identities because you know they are shifting, not fixed. You stop clinging to expectations because you know life is fluid, not under your control. This letting go is not loss. It is liberation. It creates space for joy, for compassion, for love. The canvas of emptiness is vast. On it, every moment can be painted anew. When you are no longer chained by old patterns, when you are no longer trapped by desperate effort, when you are no longer clinging to false solidity, you are free to live with creativity, with openness, with love. Emptiness is not the end of meaning. It is the space where true meaning arises, and so the journey moves forward. Having learned to act with effortlessness, you are now ready to face the canvas of emptiness, to see that letting go is not losing, that emptiness is not void, but freedom. From this space, the deepest compassion can emerge, because when you see that nothing is separate, you understand that to care for others is to care for yourself, and to heal yourself is to heal the world. There is a fear that rises in almost everyone when they hear the word emptiness. The mind imagines a void, a blank space where nothing exists, a hollow silence that strips life of meaning. We fear emptiness the way we fear loneliness, the way we fear death, the way we fear being forgotten. And yet, what the Buddha revealed is that emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a truth to be embraced. It is not the absence of life, but the openness that makes life possible. Think of a cup. If it were solid, it could hold nothing. Its usefulness lies in its emptiness, in the space inside it. Think of a room. Without the empty space, it would only be walls and ceiling and floor. It is the emptiness that allows us to live in it, to move, to breathe. In the same way, the emptiness within life does not erase it. It gives it meaning. It makes it workable. It allows love and creativity and freedom to exist. The pain comes when we misunderstand. We cling to things as solid, permanent, unchanging. We cling to the idea that our possessions will secure us, that our relationships will never shift, that our identity will remain fixed. Then when change comes, as it always does, we suffer. The house ages, the body weakens, the relationship transforms, the career ends. We see the emptiness of these things and mistake it for loss. We cry out, "Why is life so cruel? Why can nothing last?" But the problem is not impermanence itself. The problem is our clinging to permanence in a world where nothing is permanent. Emotionally, this misunderstanding creates constant anxiety. We build our security on sand, hoping it will stay solid. We hold our loved ones with desperate grasping, fearing the day they will leave. We cling to our youth, terrified of wrinkles, aches, and decline. We invest everything in achievements, fearing the moment they fade from memory. This clinging makes us brittle. When change comes, we break. We suffer not because things change, but because we demanded they would not. But when you see emptiness clearly, everything shifts. You realize that things are not solid, but interdependent. They exist only through causes and conditions, through relationships, through constant change. A tree exists because of soil, sun, water, air, and countless invisible forces. Remove any of them, and the tree cannot be. In the same way, you exist because of your parents, your teachers, the food you eat, the air you breathe, the culture you live in. You are not separate. You are not isolated. You are a living web of interconnection. This realization brings freedom. If you are not a fixed, isolated self, then you do not need to cling so tightly to identity. If possessions are not permanent, then you do not need to chain your happiness to them. If relationships are fluid, then you can love with openness instead of fear. Emptiness is not a threat. It is the spaciousness that allows you to breathe, to change, to grow, to love. The Buddha compared life to a dream, not to say it is unreal, but to show that it is fluid, insubstantial, ever-shifting. A dream can feel vivid, joyful, terrifying, but when you wake, you see its true nature. In the same way, when you awaken to emptiness, you see that life is vivid and real, but not solid. You participate fully, but you no longer cling. You live the dream with joy, knowing it is a dream. This awareness transforms how you face loss. When a loved one dies, the pain is still real, the grief still deep, but you also see that they were never separate. Their body may be gone, but their presence lives in your memories, in the lessons they taught, in the kindness they shared, in the air they breathed, in the earth that holds them now. They are empty of fixed self, but full of interconnection. Death is not the end of relationship, only a transformation. This view does not erase grief, but it softens despair. It turns loss into reverence, sorrow into gratitude. It also transforms how you live. If everything is interdependent, then every action matters. A kind word ripples through countless lives. A harmful deed spreads pain across unseen networks. Nothing is isolated. This truth awakens responsibility, not as a burden, but as a natural response. You see that to care for yourself is to care for others, and to care for others is to care for yourself. Compassion arises effortlessly because the boundaries between self and other grow thin. Seeing emptiness also awakens creativity. A blank canvas is not frightening to an artist. It is possibility. A silent space is not frightening to a musician. It is potential for sound. In the same way, the emptiness of life is not a threat. It is the openness that allows infinite forms to arise. When you no longer cling to fixed outcomes, you are free to create, to explore, to love, to play. Life becomes a dance on the canvas of emptiness, each step both fleeting and eternal. This way of seeing requires practice. The mind will still cling. It will still fear emptiness, still crave solidity. But each time you remind yourself, each time you breathe into spaciousness, trust grows. Slowly, the fear of emptiness transforms into wonder. Slowly, you realize that emptiness is not hollow. It is full of life. And from this realization arises the deepest compassion. For when you see that nothing exists in isolation, you see that the suffering of others is not separate from you. Their pain is your pain, their joy is your joy. You begin to care not from obligation, but from natural empathy. Compassion flows as naturally as breath, and it is compassion that leads us forward from the canvas of emptiness into the wellspring of boundless love, where the heart discovers its true strength in caring for all beings. To live with the awareness of emptiness is to live with lightness. But this lightness does not mean detachment in the cold sense of the word. It does not mean apathy nor withdrawal from the world. Rather, it is a lightness that allows you to meet life fully, to engage deeply, because you are no longer weighed down by false solidity. You know everything is changing, everything is interconnected, everything is open. You can hold joy without fearing its loss, because you know it was never meant to stay. You can hold sorrow without drowning in it, because you know it too will pass. You can hold relationships without clinging, because you know love is larger than possession. Yet the fear of emptiness still lingers in many hearts. People ask, if nothing is solid, if all is impermanent, then what is the point of living? What is the anchor? The answer is that emptiness itself is the anchor, because emptiness reveals interconnection. When you see that nothing exists by itself, you realize that everything exists together. You are not isolated, not alone, not meaningless. You are woven into a vast fabric of being. Each breath you take is shared with trees, oceans, and countless living beings. Each step you take is part of the earth's rhythm. Each smile you share ripples outward into infinite directions. Emptiness is not the loss of meaning. It is the expansion of meaning into infinity. The pain of misunderstanding emptiness is visible in modern life. People cling harder and harder to material wealth, thinking it will provide security. They cling to rigid identities, thinking it will provide stability. They cling to possessions, careers, reputations, hoping these will give permanence. And yet the more they cling, the more fragile they feel, because deep down they know change cannot be stopped. Anxiety, depression, isolation, these are the children of misunderstanding emptiness. But when emptiness is seen clearly, the opposite happens. Anxiety softens because you no longer demand permanence from the impermanent. Depression lightens because you see that every dark night eventually turns to dawn. Isolation dissolves because you see you are never truly separate. This clarity gives birth to compassion, because when you see your own life as interwoven with all others, you cannot help but care. You see that your joy depends on their joy, your freedom on their freedom, your peace on their peace. Compassion in this sense is not something you force. It is not an obligation, not a performance. It is a natural response to seeing reality as it is. Just as a mother instinctively reaches out when her child cries, awareness instinctively reaches out when it sees the suffering of others. You realize that helping others is not a sacrifice, but a fulfillment, because their well-being is your well-being. Compassion flows as naturally as water from a spring, endless and refreshing. This is why the teachings describe emptiness and compassion as inseparable. Emptiness clears away the illusion of separateness. Compassion rushes in to fill the space with love. Emptiness without compassion could feel cold. Compassion without emptiness could feel overwhelming. Together, they create balance. A love that is vast but not clinging. A wisdom that is clear but not distant. As this understanding deepens, your actions change. You no longer ask only, "What do I want?" You begin to ask, "What will bring peace to all?" You no longer act only from self-interest, but from awareness of interconnection. This does not mean you neglect yourself. It means you see that caring for yourself and caring for others are not separate acts. When you rest, you are stronger to serve. When you serve, your own heart is nourished. The boundaries blur, because in truth, they were never there. This compassion is not limited to grand gestures. It appears in the smallest acts: holding a door, offering a kind word, listening without judgment, smiling at a stranger. These may seem small, but each one ripples outward, touching countless lives in ways you may never see. Compassion is not measured by size. It is measured by presence. A single act of genuine kindness carries the weight of the whole universe. And as compassion becomes your natural way of being, you begin to notice another truth. Compassion is not only for others. It must also be for yourself. Many people find it easier to forgive others than to forgive themselves. They hold themselves to impossible standards, punishing every mistake, clinging to every failure. But the truth of emptiness reminds you that even your mistakes are not permanent, not fixed, not defining. You are a process, not a product. You are a river, not a stone. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that to heal yourself is to heal the whole. From this place, the journey continues naturally. Once you taste the compassion that arises from emptiness, you are ready to drink more deeply from its well. You are ready to discover the boundless love that flows without limit, the wellspring of compassion that never runs dry, the heart that beats in rhythm with all beings. This is the next step, the unfolding of boundless compassion, where emptiness blossoms into infinite love. There comes a point on the path where wisdom alone is not enough. You may understand impermanence. You may see through identity. You may even grasp the truth of emptiness. But without compassion, wisdom can feel dry, detached, incomplete. The heart longs not only to see clearly, but to love deeply. This longing is not weakness. It is the natural rhythm of being human. To live without compassion is to live half a life. To live with it is to touch the infinite. The pain of a world without compassion is all around us. You see it in the hurried faces of strangers who rush past each other without acknowledgement. You see it in workplaces where competition erases kindness, where people are treated as tools instead of souls. You see it in families where silence replaces listening, where love is buried under resentment. And on a larger scale, you see it in wars, in oppression, in the cruelty that arises when people forget that others feel pain just as they do. This absence of compassion creates a world that is cold, lonely, and harsh. On a personal level, the absence of compassion shows up as isolation. You carry your burdens alone, convinced no one would understand. You judge yourself harshly, believing you must be perfect to be worthy. You protect yourself with walls of indifference, fearing that opening your heart will only lead to hurt. These defenses may keep pain out for a while, but they also keep love out. They leave you safe but empty, armored but lonely. Emotionally, the cost of living without compassion is heavy. Anxiety grows because you feel disconnected. Anger rises because you see others as obstacles instead of fellow travelers. Sadness deepens because the heart, built to love, withers when love is withheld. Even success feels hollow without compassion, because joy shared is joy multiplied, but joy hoarded shrinks. Without compassion, even the brightest victories taste of ashdot. The Buddha taught that compassion is the natural fruit of wisdom. When you see clearly that all beings suffer, and when you see that suffering arises from the same causes, clinging, ignorance, fear, your heart cannot help but soften. You realize that the anger of another is not their true self, but the echo of their pain. You realize that the cruelty of another is not ultimate evil, but the blindness of their ignorance. This does not excuse harm, but it transforms your response. Instead of hatred, compassion arises. Instead of vengeance, understanding grows. Compassion, in this sense, is not sentimental. It is not pity. It is strength. It is the courage to open your heart to suffering without turning away. It is the willingness to stay present with pain, yours and others, without drowning in it. It is the ability to act with kindness, even when the world tempts you to harden. Compassion is not weakness. It is the deepest power, because it connects you to the very fabric of life. Consider the story of someone who carries anger toward a parent. For years they hold resentment, replaying every wound, every failure. The anger feels justified, but it burns them more than anyone else. Then one day they look deeper. They see that their parent too carried wounds, that their harshness came not from malice, but from their own pain. This recognition does not erase the harm, but it opens space for compassion. The anger softens. Forgiveness begins. And in that forgiveness, freedom arises. Compassion does not always mean fixing or saving. Sometimes it simply means being present, sitting with a friend in silence while they grieve, offering a gentle smile to a stranger who looks weary, holding your own pain tenderly instead of pushing it away. These small acts are the heartbeat of compassion. They remind us that we are not alone, that life is bearable and carried together. When compassion becomes your natural response, life changes. Conflicts resolve more easily because you are listening instead of defending. Relationships deepen because you are seeing others as whole beings instead of roles to fill. Even strangers become less threatening because you sense their humanity. Compassion transforms the world not by grand revolutions, but by countless quiet acts of love. And the more you give compassion, the more you receive it. Not always directly, not always immediately, but in ways that surprise you. A kindness returned years later, a smile in the middle of a hard day, a stranger who helps when you least expect it. Compassion is contagious. It spreads quietly, invisibly, but powerfully. In a world hungry for connection, every act of compassion is a seed of healing. But perhaps the most radical compassion is the one you show yourself. For many, this is the hardest. You may forgive others easily, but hold yourself to impossible standards. You may show patience with others' mistakes, but punish yourself for every flaw. You may believe that compassion is for everyone else, but not for you. Yet the Buddha taught that self-compassion is essential. Without it, your compassion for others is incomplete. Without it, your heart is divided. To practice self-compassion is to recognize that you too are human. You too are learning. You too are worthy of care. It is to meet your own suffering, not with judgment, but with kindness. It is to say to yourself, may I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. May I be held in love. This simple practice can feel awkward at first, but over time becomes natural, like watering a thirsty plant. And when your own heart is nourished, your compassion for others overflows without effort. This is the wellspring of boundless compassion. It is not a resource that runs out. It is not limited by distance or by time. It is as vast as the sky, as deep as the ocean. Once tapped, it flows endlessly, because it is not yours alone. It is the natural expression of life itself. When you live from this wellspring, every act, every word, every breath can become an offering of compassion. And in this offering, you find your true strength, your true joy, your true purpose. From here, the journey does not end. Compassion naturally leads to wisdom, and wisdom deepens compassion. Together, they reveal the final freedom, the liberation from the endless cycle of suffering. The path now turns toward awakening, where the teachings converge. where the heart and mind find rest in the vast stillness beyond clinging. Compassion, when it truly blossoms, has no boundary. At first, you may direct it only toward those closest to you, your family, your friends, those who treat you kindly. But as practice deepens, compassion expands. It begins to include those who are neutral, those you do not know, even those who may have harmed you. This expansion is not forced. It grows naturally when you see that all beings suffer, that all beings long for happiness, that all beings are caught in the same fragile web of impermanence. The pain of living without this boundless compassion is visible in the divisions of the world. Nations against nations, groups against groups, individuals against individuals, all fueled by the illusion of separateness. When compassion is limited only to us and not to them, walls rise, wars ignite, suffering multiplies. The absence of boundless compassion is the root of conflict. And yet, when even a single heart opens, healing begins. Emotionally, holding on to narrow compassion creates tension. You may feel love for some, but hatred for others, and the heart becomes split. You may feel compassion only when conditions are easy, but close when challenged. This inconsistency creates inner conflict. Part of you knows love is natural, but part of you clings to judgment, to fear, to resentment. The result is unrest. The heart cannot find peace when it is divided. Boundless compassion is the medicine. The Buddha taught the practice of metta, or loving kindness, as a way to expand compassion beyond all limits. You begin by offering kindness to yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be at peace. Then you extend it outward, to a loved one, to a neutral person, to a difficult person, and finally to all beings everywhere. At first, these words may feel mechanical, but with repetition, they sink deeper. You begin to feel the truth, that the wish for happiness belongs to everyone, that no one is excluded. Asterisk, this practice changes the way you see the world. A stranger on the street is no longer just a face, but a being with hopes and fears like your own. An enemy is no longer just an enemy, but a human caught in suffering. Even those who seem most cruel are seen through the lens of compassion, not excused, but understood. You realize that their actions come from ignorance, from wounds, from clinging. This insight does not make you passive. It makes you wise. It allows you to act firmly when needed, but without hatred. When compassion flows in this way, life becomes lighter. Resentment dissolves. Hatred fades. Forgiveness becomes possible. You no longer carry the heavy burden of enemies in your heart. Instead, you carry a spacious love that holds everyone. This does not mean you allow harm. It means you protect with love. You resist with compassion. You stand firm with understanding. Boundless compassion is not weakness. It is the strongest shield and the most powerful weapon, because it transforms both you and the world. Perhaps the most profound shift is how compassion and emptiness weave together. When you see emptiness, you understand that no being is separate. When you feel compassion, you act from that understanding. Wisdom shows you the truth. Compassion moves you to live it. Together, they open the door to liberation, the freedom from the endless cycle of clinging and suffering. This cycle, often called the wheel of life, keeps turning because beings cling to self, to desire, to aversion. They repeat the same patterns again and again, lifetime after lifetime, moment after moment. But compassion breaks the cycle. When you act not from clinging, but from love, you no longer feed the wheel. When you respond not from ignorance, but from awareness, you step off the endless turning. The Buddha taught that liberation is not a distant heaven, but a present possibility. It arises here and now, in the mind that sees clearly and loves boundlessly. It is the mind that no longer clings, no longer resists, no longer fears. It is the mind that rests in wisdom and acts in compassion. This is freedom. This is awakening dot, and so the journey continues. Having opened the wellspring of boundless compassion, the path now leads to its ultimate fruit, liberation from the endless cycle of suffering. This is where wisdom and compassion meet in their highest form, where the heart and mind find true rest, where the journey finds its deepest fulfillment. Life often feels like repetition. The same arguments return, the same fears resurface, the same mistakes repeat. You may change jobs, move houses, even begin new relationships, but somehow the same struggles follow you. It can feel like walking in circles, as if no matter where you turn, you end up in the same place. This is the endless cycle of suffering, the wheel that turns again and again when the mind clings. The pain of this cycle is heavy because it brings both weariness and despair. You grow tired of facing the same patterns, tired of watching the same disappointments unfold. A voice inside whispers, maybe nothing will ever change, maybe this is who I am, maybe I am trapped forever. This despair can be as painful as the suffering itself because it erases hope. To live without hope is to live half alive, carrying a weight that makes every step harder. The root of this cycle lies in craving and ignorance. You crave pleasure, security, recognition, certainty. When you get them, you cling, fearing their loss. When you do not get them, you feel anger, jealousy, grief. Beneath it all lies ignorance, the belief that these things are solid, permanent, capable of giving lasting peace. But because everything changes, the cycle continues. Clinging leads to disappointment. Disappointment leads to more clinging. Round and round it goes. Emotionally, the toll is enormous. Anxiety arises because you fear the future will take away what you cling to. Regret arises because you replay the past, wishing it were different. Restlessness arises because you chase the next thing, never content with what is here. Together, these weave a net that traps the heart, leaving you restless even in moments of comfort. The Buddha described this cycle as samsara, the endless wandering. But he also revealed the way out. Liberation or nirvana is not escape to another world. It is the end of clinging in this one. It is the freedom that comes when the fire of craving is extinguished, when the mind no longer fuels the wheel. Liberation is not about changing what happens. It is about changing your relationship to it. When you no longer cling, when you no longer resist, suffering ends. This freedom is possible because suffering is not permanent. It is created by causes, and when those causes end, suffering ends. Just as fire burns only when fed, suffering continues only when clinging continues. Remove the fuel, and the fire dies. Release the clinging, and the cycle stops. This is the radical hope of the path. No matter how many times the wheel has turned, it can stop. No matter how long the cycle has continued, it can end. Imagine carrying a heavy rope, knotted and tangled. You pull on it, trying to make it straight, but the more you pull, the tighter the knots become. Then one day you stop pulling. You look closely, patiently, and begin to untangle. Knot by knot, the rope loosens. Eventually, it lies free in your hands. In the same way, liberation is not a sudden miracle. It is the steady untangling of clinging, the patient loosening of ignorance, the gradual freeing of the heart. This path of liberation is walked through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. Mindfulness helps you see the cycle as it happens. You notice the craving as it rises, the clinging as it tightens, the suffering as it follows. You no longer move blindly. You see clearly. Compassion helps you hold the process gently. Instead of judging yourself for falling into the cycle, you meet yourself with kindness. Wisdom shows you the impermanence of all things, reminding you that no matter how strong the craving feels, it too will pass. Together, these practices weaken the cycle. Each time you notice craving without feeding it, you weaken the habit. Each time you meet suffering with compassion instead of resistance, you soften the grip. Each time you remember impermanence, you release a little more. Slowly, the wheel turns less fiercely. Slowly, the heart begins to rest. Liberation does not mean you will never feel pain again. The body may still ache. Relationships may still shift. Losses may still come. But suffering, the extra weight created by clinging, falls away. Pain becomes just pain, not a prison. Loss becomes just loss, not despair. Change becomes just change, not fear. This is the freedom of liberation, not the end of life's challenges, but the end of being enslaved by them. When you taste even a glimpse of this freedom, the world looks different. You see beauty more clearly because you are not busy clinging. You feel love more deeply because you are not trying to possess. You live more fully because you are not trapped in fear. Life becomes lighter, not because it has changed, but because your relationship to it has transformed. And from this freedom arises a new way of being. You begin to live not for clinging, but for giving, not for self alone, but for all. You act not to feed the cycle, but to ease suffering wherever you find it. Liberation becomes not only your freedom, but the freedom you offer the world. In this way, the path of awakening is both personal and universal. It ends your suffering, and it becomes a light for others. Yet even as freedom grows, another step awaits. Liberation is not only the end of suffering, it is also the beginning of awakening, the blossoming of wisdom and compassion in their fullest form. When the cycle ends, the path opens into vast stillness, vast clarity, vast love. This is awakening, the deepest realization of the journey, where the heart and mind rest in their true nature, beyond clinging, beyond fear, beyond separation, that the wheel of suffering does not only spin in obvious ways. Sometimes it turns quietly, hidden beneath ordinary life. You may not be in crisis, you may not be in deep pain, yet the cycle continues through subtle dissatisfaction. You achieve something, and for a brief moment you feel joy. But soon the joy fades and restlessness returns. You buy something new, and for a moment it feels exciting. But soon it gathers dust, and the craving for the next thing begins. This quiet hunger, this constant reaching, is the heartbeat of the cycle. It is why even in moments of comfort, the heart cannot fully rest. The pain of this cycle is that it never feels complete. No matter how much you gain, something is missing. No matter how much you achieve, it never feels enough. You may look at your life and think, I should be happy. I have so much. Why do I still feel empty? This emptiness is not the liberating kind. It is the emptiness of craving, the endless hunger that nothing can fill. It leaves you running faster and faster, yet never arriving. Emotionally, this creates exhaustion. You are tired not only from work, but from the constant chase. You are tired of carrying expectations, tired of comparing yourself, tired of never resting in contentment. Anxiety rises because you fear losing what you have. Guilt rises because you think you should be more grateful. Shame rises because you wonder why happiness escapes you. This exhaustion is the quiet suffering of modern life, the cycle that hides behind busyness and distraction. Asterisk. The Buddha's teaching pierces this cycle with profound simplicity. The end of clinging is the end of suffering. It sounds too simple, but its truth is deep. When you stop demanding that life give you more than it can, peace appears. When you stop clinging to pleasure as permanent, joy becomes lighter, freer, more available. When you stop resisting pain, it loses its sharpness. Liberation is not about escaping life. It is about living it without the chains of craving and aversion. This freedom is not distant. It can be tasted in small moments. When you pause to breathe instead of rushing, you taste freedom. When you let go of an argument instead of clinging to being right, you taste freedom. When you enjoy a meal without needing it to be more than it is, you taste freedom. Each small taste reveals the possibility of a life lived without chains. And each taste strengthens the trust that complete liberation is possible. The path to this freedom is walked step by step. Mindfulness is the first step. By noticing your craving and resistance, you bring them into the light. Awareness breaks the habit of blindness. Compassion is the second step. By meeting your suffering gently, you soften the harshness that keeps the cycle alive. Kindness breaks the habit of judgment. Wisdom is the third step. By seeing impermanence clearly, you stop clinging to what cannot last. Insight breaks the habit of ignorance. Together, these steps untangle the knots of suffering. Imagine sitting by a river. If you reach in to grasp the water, it slips through your fingers. If you build a dam to hold it, it eventually overflows. But if you simply watch, you see the river flow naturally, moment by moment. Life is like this river. Clinging creates frustration. Resisting creates struggle. But watching with awareness creates peace. Liberation is the choice to sit by the river without grasping or resisting. Simply present, simply free. This peace is not passive. It does not mean withdrawing from life. It means participating fully, but without clinging. You still love, but you do not imprison love with fear. You still work, but you do not chain work with desperation. You still dream, but you do not burden dreams with expectation. Life continues, but now as a dance instead of a battle. This is liberation in daily life, not escape from the world, but freedom within it. And when the heart rests in this freedom, something deeper begins to open. The constant noise of craving grows quieter. The restless chasing slows. In the silence that remains, you sense a vast stillness, a spacious awareness that was always there, but hidden beneath the turning of the wheel. This stillness is not empty in a frightening way. It is full, alive, radiant. It is the ground of being, the home you have always longed for. This awakening to vast stillness is the fruit of liberation. It is not something you create. It is something you uncover, like the sky revealed when clouds part. The sky was always there, vast and clear, but the storms of craving hid it. When the storms pass, the sky reveals itself. Awakening is like this, not an achievement, not a possession, but a recognition of what has always been true, and so the journey continues. From the exhaustion of the endless cycle, you move into the stillness beyond it. From the wheel of suffering, you step into the vastness of awakening. This is the next step, the invitation to rest in the stillness that holds all things. To awaken to the truth that freedom is not far away, but always here, waiting for you to notice. There is a kind of silence that many people fear. When the television is off, when the phone is set aside, when the noise of conversation fades, a stillness appears. For many, this stillness feels uncomfortable. Restlessness rises. Thoughts grow louder. Memories return. It feels easier to run back into distraction than to remain in the quiet. This fear of stillness is common because stillness confronts you with yourself. It strips away the masks of busyness and leaves you face to face with your own mind. The pain of avoiding stillness is that you remain caught in noise. Life becomes a constant chase for distraction music, entertainment, conversation, work, anything to avoid silence. Yet no matter how much you fill your days, the quiet moments still come. At night before sleep, in the pause between tasks, in the spaces where distraction slips away, the silence returns. And with it, the unresolved fears, the unhealed wounds, the questions you try to avoid. Running from stillness means running endlessly, never resting, never arriving. Emotionally, the avoidance of stillness creates exhaustion. You feel tired not only from activity, but from the constant effort to escape yourself. Anxiety grows, because you never settle. Loneliness deepens because you are never truly present with yourself. Even joy feels thin because it is always layered over restlessness. The absence of stillness leaves you chasing life instead of inhabiting it. The Buddha invited his followers to do the opposite, to turn toward stillness, to rest in it, to discover its depth. For within the stillness is not emptiness in the frightening sense, but awakening. When the noise of craving and resistance falls quiet, a vast awareness reveals itself. This awareness is not limited, not bound by self, not disturbed by change. It is the stillness beneath all motion, the silence beneath all sound, the sky beneath all clouds. To awaken to this vast stillness is to discover your true home. This awakening is not something distant or abstract. You can taste it in the simple act of sitting quietly, breathing, and noticing. At first, the mind chatters, the body fidgets, the emotions swirl. But if you remain, if you breathe gently, the noise begins to settle. Slowly, you notice the space between thoughts, the silence between breaths, the awareness that is always present, always watching. This awareness is vast, timeless, untouched by the rise and fall of thoughts. It is the stillness you have always sought without knowing it. Imagine a lake on a windy day. Waves ripple across its surface, distorting the reflection of the sky. But when the wind calms, the water grows still, and the sky reflects perfectly. The mind is like this lake. When stirred by craving and fear, it is restless, clouded. But when stillness comes, it reflects truth clearly. Awakening to vast stillness is like discovering that your mind is not the storm, not the waves, but the lake itself, capable of calm, capable of clarity, capable of peace. This awakening does not mean withdrawal from life. It does not mean sitting in silence forever, detached from the world. It means carrying stillness within you into every action. When you speak from stillness. When you work from stillness. When you love from stillness. The noise of the world may continue, but within you, the lake remains calm. This is the gift of awakening, to live fully engaged, yet rooted in vast peace. Awakening also reveals a truth about identity. You may have believed you are only your thoughts, your emotions, your roles, your history. But in stillness, you see that you are awareness itself, larger than any thought, larger than any role. Thoughts come and go, but awareness remains. Emotions rise and fall, but awareness remains. Even the body changes, but awareness remains. To awaken is to rest in this awareness, to recognize yourself not as the storm, but as the sky. This recognition brings freedom. You no longer cling to every thought as truth, no longer drown in every emotion as final. You hold them lightly, like clouds passing through the sky. This lightness does not make you careless. It makes you compassionate, because you see that others too are caught in storms. From stillness, you can offer calm. From vastness, you can offer perspective. Awakening is not only for yourself. It becomes a refuge for those around you. And yet, awakening is not the end of the journey. It is a beginning. For when you rest in vast stillness, a new question arises. How do I live this in the world? How do I embody awakening in action, in relationship, in community? The answer lies in integration. Awakening is not meant to remain on the meditation cushion. It is meant to flow into daily life, to guide choices, to shape actions, to transform the ordinary into the sacred. This integration is the next step. From the vast stillness of awakening, you learn to return to the marketplace of life with open hands and a calm heart. You learn to live awakening, not as an escape, but as engagement, not as distance, but as intimacy. This is the final step of the journey, integration into life itself, where the path and the world become one. The first taste of stillness can feel like coming home after a long journey. For a moment, the noise quiets, the chasing stops, and you rest in vast awareness. Yet the challenge arises when you try to carry this stillness into daily life. The world does not stop being noisy. Responsibilities do not disappear. Bills must still be paid. Relationships still require attention. Conflicts still arise. The question then becomes, how can awakening remain alive in the midst of ordinary living? The pain of separation often begins here. People imagine that awakening means leaving life behind, escaping to a cave or a monastery, abandoning the world. But for most, this is not possible, nor is it necessary. Awakening is not meant to remove you from life. It is meant to transform the way you live it. The suffering arises when you try to divide the sacred from the ordinary. Believing peace is only possible in silence, but not in noise. Only on the cushion, but not in the office. Only in retreat, but not in relationship. This division keeps you trapped, because life is always mixed, always full, always both silence and noise. Emotionally, this split creates frustration. You may feel peaceful in meditation, only to lose that peace in traffic. You may feel vast while sitting in stillness, only to shrink back into anger during an argument. You may feel clarity while alone, only to drown in confusion when surrounded by others. This back and forth can make you doubt your progress. You wonder, if awakening disappears so easily, is it real at all? But the truth is that awakening does not disappear. It is always present, like the sky behind the clouds. The challenge is learning to recognize it, even in the midst of storms. The Buddha compared it to the moon behind clouds. Some nights the clouds cover it completely. Some nights they reveal only a sliver. Some nights the sky is clear and the moon shines full. But the moon is always there. In the same way, stillness is always within you, even when life feels stormy. Awakening is learning to remember, to return, to rest in it again and again. This remembrance becomes easier with practice. Each time you pause in the middle of stress and take a single mindful breath, you return to stillness. Each time you notice anger rising and choose not to feed it, you return to stillness. Each time you listen deeply instead of rushing to speak, you return to stillness. These small moments are not failures compared to long meditations. They are the living proof that awakening can be integrated into every part of life. The gift of this integration is freedom. You no longer feel trapped in the belief that peace is far away. You realize it is always here, even in traffic, even in conflict, even in work. You begin to trust that you can carry stillness within you, that you can act from it, speak from it, love from it. This trust turns awakening from a private experience into a way of living dot, and when awakening flows into life, it transforms everything. Work becomes less about proving yourself and more about contributing. Relationships become less about clinging and more about connection. Even challenges become less about fear and more about growth. You do not escape life's difficulties, but you meet them with clarity, compassion, and resilience. Awakening does not erase humanity. It deepens it, yet there is another challenge. Some fear that living from stillness will make them passive, that they will lose ambition, that they will stop striving. But the opposite is true. From stillness arises a deeper energy, a clearer action, a more compassionate motivation. You still act, but without desperation. You still strive, but without clinging. You still dream, but without fear. This is the paradox of awakening. The more you let go, the more alive you become, and so the path points toward its final step. After seeing through impermanence, after loosening identity, after finding balance, after dissolving patterns, after embracing emptiness, after opening compassion, after tasting liberation, after awakening to stillness, the journey now calls you to return fully to life. Integration is the flowering of all that has come before. It is where wisdom and compassion meet in action, where the ordinary becomes sacred, where the path and the world are no longer two. The journey of awakening can feel complete when you taste stillness, when you rest in vast awareness, when you see through clinging and feel compassion without limit. Yet the path is not finished until it is lived in the marketplace of life, in the ordinary days of work, family, conflict, and joy. Integration is the final step, and it is also the most challenging. To sit in silence is one thing. To carry that silence into a noisy world is another. The pain of failing to integrate is familiar. You may feel at peace in meditation, but lose that peace in a meeting at work. You may feel compassion in retreat, but lose patience in traffic. You may feel clarity in solitude, but collapse into confusion when family pressures return. This gap between inner practice and outer life creates frustration. You may even feel like an imposter, living two separate lives, one spiritual, one ordinary. This split itself becomes another form of suffering. Emotionally, the cost of this division is heavy. You long for authenticity, to live as one whole person, not two. You want your actions to reflect your insights, your relationships to reflect your compassion, your work to reflect your wisdom. When they do not, shame arises. You may tell yourself you are failing, that your practice is shallow, that awakening is slipping away. But in truth, integration is not failure. It is the real work of the path. It is where awakening becomes embodied. The Buddha never taught awakening as an escape. He lived in the world, teaching in villages, walking among the sick, speaking to kings and beggars alike. His example shows that the point of awakening is not to leave life behind, but to live it differently. Integration means allowing wisdom to guide every choice, compassion to shape every interaction, stillness to steady every moment. It means no longer separating spiritual life from ordinary life, because all of it is life, all of it is the path. How does this look in practice? It looks like pausing before speaking in anger, remembering stillness. It looks like bringing compassion into conflict, even when hurt. It looks like working with sincerity, but without desperate clinging. It looks like resting without guilt, knowing rest too is sacred. Integration does not mean perfection. It means presence. It means remembering the truth, even in the middle of forgetting, returning again and again until return itself becomes natural. The pain of life does not vanish with integration. Bills still need to be paid. Illness still comes. Loss still hurts. But the way you hold them changes. You no longer meet them with panic or despair, but with steadiness and compassion. You no longer collapse into old patterns, but rest in awareness. This does not mean you never feel sorrow or anger. It means you feel them fully without being consumed. You act wisely without being bound. This is freedom lived in daily life. Integration also means allowing awakening to flow outward into service. Wisdom without compassion can remain self-centered. Compassion without action can remain incomplete. Integration brings both together. You see suffering in the world, and you respond not out of guilt, not out of pride, but out of natural empathy. You care for a child, you listen to a friend, you give to a stranger, you work for justice. Each act, however small, becomes a continuation of the path. This way of living brings joy, because it resolves the split within you. No longer are you one person in silence and another in noise. You are whole. No longer do you chase awakening as a separate state. You live it. You embody it. The marketplace becomes your monastery, the kitchen your temple, the office your meditation hall. Every breath, every word, every step is practice. The sacred is no longer hidden. It is everywhere. And yet, integration is not the end of striving for perfection. It is the deep acceptance that life itself is the practice, that awakening is never separate from the moment you are in. There will still be days of anger, days of fear, days of forgetting, But even these become part of the path. Integration means seeing that nothing is outside of practice, nothing is wasted, nothing is excluded. Every moment is a chance to return, to embody wisdom, to live compassion. From here, the path circles back to where it began, the suffering of ordinary life. But now it is seen differently. Stress, money, relationships, anxiety, identity, all the struggles remain, but they are no longer prisons. They are teachers. They are reminders. They are invitations to embody what you have learned. Integration is the completion of the circle, where the pains of life become the soil in which freedom grows out. And as this integration deepens, another truth emerges. You realize that the journey is never truly finished. Awakening is not a final destination, but an unfolding, a living practice. Each day brings new challenges, new opportunities, new invitations to live the path. Integration is not the end of the story. It is the continuation of it, lived moment by moment, breath by breath, step by step. This is the heart of integration. To live awakening, not as something separate from life, but as life itself. To embody stillness in action, compassion in conflict, wisdom in the marketplace. To see no boundary between sacred and ordinary, between practice and living, between path and world. This is where the journey finds its fullest expression, not in escape, but in engagement, not in retreat, but in return, not in silence alone, but in the song of life. To live integration is to realize that awakening is not a special state, kept apart from life, but the thread that runs through every moment. It is not found only in meditation halls or mountain retreats. It is found in the way you breathe while waiting in line, in the way you speak when tension rises, in the way you notice the colors of the sky at dusk, when awareness, compassion, and stillness flow through the ordinary. Life itself becomes sacred. The pain that arises when integration is absent is the pain of division. You may know the truth, but not live it. Speak of compassion, but fail to practice it. Glimpse stillness, but lose it in the rush of tasks. This gap between knowing and living creates unease. You feel as if you are betraying your own heart. Yet the Buddha's path reminds us that integration is not about perfection. It is about returning. Each time you forget, you can remember again. Each time you fall, you can stand again. The path is not broken by mistakes. It is made by returns. Emotionally, integration brings a deep sense of belonging. You no longer feel torn between spiritual life and ordinary life. You see that they are the same. You no longer feel like an outsider to your own existence. You belong in every moment, because every moment is practice. Even difficulty belongs. Even imperfection belongs. Integration brings relief because it ends the war within you, the conflict between who you are and who you think you should be. Living this way changes the world around you. Relationships soften as you bring compassion into them. Work shifts as you bring presence instead of panic. Communities heal as individuals embody wisdom and kindness. Integration is contagious. Just as anxiety spreads, so does peace. Just as anger spreads, so does compassion. By embodying the path, you become a quiet teacher, not through words, but through presence. People feel it in the steadiness of your gaze, the calm in your voice, the sincerity of your actions. Integration also transforms how you face mortality. Death, once feared as an end, becomes simply another part of life, another transformation. When you live integrated, you no longer cling desperately to extending life at all costs, nor do you waste it in distraction. You live each day fully, and when the last day comes, you meet it with peace. This is the ultimate fruit of the path, not immortality, but freedom in life and in death. As the journey closes, you see how each step was necessary. The stress and anxiety that first drove you to seek, the recognition of impermanence that broke illusions, the loosening of identity that created space, the balance that steadied your heart, the dissolving of patterns that freed your actions, the embrace of emptiness that opened vastness, the wellspring of compassion that softened the world, the liberation that ended the cycle of clinging, the awakening that revealed stillness, and finally, the integration that brought all of it into life. Each step was part of one path, one unfolding, one return to what was always within you. The conclusion is not a final ending, but an invitation. The invitation is to live this path daily, to embody it not as a theory, but as a way of being. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be holy. You only need to remember, to return, to practice presence and compassion where you are. This is how the world heals, not through grand miracles, but through countless small acts of integration, lived by ordinary people in ordinary moments. So as you step forward from this journey, carry with you the trust that awakening is not far. It is here, in your next breath. Carry with you the courage to bring compassion into your relationships, stillness into your work, wisdom into your choices. Carry with you the knowing that every step is practice, every moment is the path, every life is sacred. And carry with you the hope that in embodying this truth, you contribute to a world of greater peace, greater love, greater freedom. The Buddha once said, "As the great ocean has but one taste, the taste of salt, so too does the Dharma have but one taste, the taste of freedom." This freedom is not separate from your life. It is your life, lived with awareness, compassion, and stillness. May you walk this path with courage. May you live it with joy. May you embody it with love. And may the taste of freedom guide you always, in every breath, in every step, in every moment of your journey.